So it is my pleasure to welcome all of you today here and those of you who are streaming to the All Saints Forum. And I would like to start this morning, this forum, with prayer and a few seconds of silence to ground ourselves. God, you are in all things and contained by no thing. Ground us in your light, your truth, and your love. Amen. All Saints Church is committed to welcoming and caring for all persons, whoever you are and wherever you are in your journey of faith. And in this truth-telling that this amazing group of women are going to further us in today, we're aware that other people's pain and stories and trauma can be touched on. So I wanted to start today's presentation by telling you or reminding you about some services, caring services that we have in the Office of Pastoral Care, Healing, and Health, and also to let you know that there are brochures of those ministries on our action table. One of those is the lay counseling ministry, in which we have lay counselors that are trained and prepared to meet with any person to talk about concerns or in need of guidance. And also our Healing Partners prayer ministry, which is rooted in the sacrament of healing. So if you would like more information, you can look on the table, or also anytime contact me by phone or email. So the history of women's courageous truth-telling is long and instructive, from the writings that Plato called passionately direct to what others more recently have called disruptive truth-telling. Women willing to tell stories as a force of change is in the best of the prophetic tradition. And disruptive truth-telling puts us on the path from restoration to liberation. In her great speech at the Women's Rights Convention in 1851, Sojourner Truth said, "If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now that they are asking to do it, the rest of you better help." It is my honor today to introduce 5 amazing, boundary-breaking, truth-telling women who are turning the world right side up again. And I'm also proud to say that they are active members of the All Saints community. Their courage to assert themselves effectively through expressions of their personal power has already altered the toxic, patriarchal, institutional culture of the entertainment industry. And they're here today to discuss their stories and help us form a vision of what a true movement of justice might look like. So I am delighted to welcome, on the left, Janet Carol Norton. You know, you ought to see the biographies of these women. In fact, you can, on our webpage, the full bios are there. They are truly astounding in what they have accomplished in their lives. So the first is Janet Carol Norton, agent, partner, and co-head of television production of ICM Partners. And next to her is Quinn Cummings, actor and author, Oscar nominated, in The Goodbye Girl and The Year of Living Dangerously. And next is Erin O'Malley, executive producer of New Girl and Curb Your Enthusiasm. And next is Karen Alexander, supermodel and the first woman of color to grace the cover of Vogue magazine. And lastly, Amy Brenneman, actor, producer, judging Amy and the leftovers, and she will be our moderator today.
Thank you. Thanks, Sally. Well, I just came from the 9 o'clock service, which was unbelievable. And I feel like my role as a moderator got simpler, which is, I think, to hold space. And I really thank Mike for positioning this moment. And thank you, Mike. That was incredible. And to not rush toward solution or toward feeling comfortable, but to really honor the lament, the powerful lament that this moment is. And it's going to be, it is exciting and messy and totally dysregulating, even for those of us who welcome it. So I'm just going to hold some space for these amazing women. And I'm just so, I mean, they'll tell their bios and their point of view, but what I love about this group is that it's sort of a multifaceted diamond. So we have people in front of cameras and behind cameras and producers, and very much interested on the agency side. For those of you who don't know, the agencies are a very powerful tool of this industry, and often are the gatekeepers between performers and producers and jobs, and so can help or hurt that process as well. So I'm here as I'm a performer, an actor, and also a producer. And I want to say that because, you know, once I raised my hand to create and executive produce Judging Amy, I got very interested in creating culture on the set. So at this stage in my life, I sort of go back and forth between being chosen to be part of other people's cultures and creating my own, and interested in that discussion. So we have such a limited amount of time, and I want to get everybody asking questions if they need to, so I'm going to kick it off. And I just want to ask each one on the panel here sort of what brought you personally to this seat today, quite literally, and why, you know, it's a huge question, but why now? Why do you think people are being heard, victims are being heard, and these extraordinary, swift, often changes are happening? Why now, if this has been such a systemic problem?
Or do you want to keep that and I'll take it?
Oh, yeah, good.
Good morning. I think now, as a model, I've always known that there's been sexual harassment and abuse, but for the women that I know, we're getting braver. And the Me Too sort of movement and the movement that's going on with models, I think we're sort of gaining strength from each other. And I think that, you know, most of my colleagues are in their 50s, and we just have to tell the truth. I mean, truth feels life-giving, and anything less than that does not. So why am I here? I'm feeling more brave, and I'm certainly more brave being up here with all of you. And I think every little bit gets me to be a bit more brave. Have I told my own stories? No, not yet. But for me, this is a season of revelation. I'm not quite ready to go beyond that. This is just where I am. So it feels like the right season. And I also have to say, I'm nervous to say it, but I want to say, because of who is in the White House, a lot of the women that I know, Donald Trump owned an agency, a modeling agency, and so a lot of us were feeling very triggered by some of the things that were said. So that's sort of...
That is, thank you for that. And when I had scribbled all these things again, I don't need any of it, but I just, as Not that I was checking the internet during church, but I was checking the internet during church. And the Wi-Fi is really good, by the way. Not that I encourage it. Harvey Weinstein, Charlie Rose, Matt Lauer, Louis C.K., Kevin Spacey, Brett Ratner, Al Franken, James Toback, Israel Horowitz, Garrison Keillor, John Conyers, Mal Halperin, Roy Moore, and the President of the United States. So obviously, this problem cuts across political lines, gender lines. You know what I mean? As much as we want to point fingers, it is so systemic, and you know, that's just today, and that is just the people that are of celebrity. So we can, that is the tip of the iceberg to every other person who may not be a recognizable name. So thank you.
Yeah. I think I feel the same. I wasn't going to be scared to say it. I was going to say it straight out. That, you know, we have a president who has been accused multiple times, and the women, you know, all he had to do, or all anyone around him had to do, was say they're lying, and it gets swept under the carpet. So I think there's a lot of, I don't know why it's happening now. I have a lot of theories. One of my theories is that there's just that enough is enough situation going on, that we're just like, we're done. We have to stop, you know, hiding this. We got to talk about it. I also think it just leads to, there's other conversations, if we're going to talk just about the entertainment industry, you know, the fact that there's, you know, only, I was reading something this morning, I think it was on CNN, that of the 100 biggest grossing movies of last year, 5 of them were directed by women. You know, like 80% of the entertainment industry, the places of power, are held by men, like 80%. So I think all of us, it's causing these conversations about why aren't there more female directors? Why aren't more female actresses producing their own content? Why are there very few female writers being nominated for anything or writing anything? So we exist, we're just not getting the jobs or the power. So I think all those conversations have been going on in the entertainment industry, and that is all, you know, just leads to the same problem, that it's power. And this is one of the worst abuses of power, and we're finally calling it out. And once you open up, you know, the can of worms, it just keeps going, and people get more and more brave, like you said, you know.
Well, and maybe look back at their own history or something that happened to them. You know, and again, there's variations of a theme, right? And so there's the extreme theme of somebody raped or somebody saying, don't tell anybody. And then there's the, like, slap you on the ass, and well, that's just who that guy is.
Right.
So I think all of it, you know, which it can be confusing sometimes, because it's like, well, that isn't exactly the same as that, but maybe the impulse is the same. And now is the time of lament, and it's all coming out. And did you explain what you do because you explained you come from the modeling world? And
yeah, that's actually how I sort of got here. Well, I've known Mike Kimmon for many, many years. We grew up together, literally grew up together. But as a director and an executive producer, I am in a place of being a manager, and I, just like what Amy was saying, I think it's important that I have to set the tone for the set. And that tone is respect and safety. You know, we're not curing cancer when we are making half-hour comedy, but we're doing something that's important, and it's something that's worth doing well, and it's worth doing with each other as a team where we're being respectful. And I think in my position, I'm the person you go to if there's an HR problem. And I've had many, many HR issues, even on sets that I have set the tone on. So it's a problem, and it's something I've had to address lots and lots of times with HR departments.
And can I just ask real quick before we go to Quinn? I assume the majority of it are women talking about men that have mistreated them. How often does it go the other way? I'm just curious.
How often have I had a man come
A
to me?
man say, hey, that woman really...
I've never had a man.
Okay, that's what I thought.
The one HR male situation I had is I had a man come to me who worked on the crew who said, hey, listen, one of the girls on set came up to me, took me aside, and told me that a joke I made was really offensive to her, and I'm so worried she's going to go to HR and be mad at me and that she's upset with me. And I said, well, should we go to HR and the two of you work this out right now? Like, we can do that. That was a really difficult situation for me because if a woman comes, I've had lots of women come to me and go, listen, I want you to know that this guy said this and this, and I don't want you to do anything about it, but I just want you to know. And my response is always, I'm so sorry, I have to go and do something about it. I'm not, it's not even about like doing the right thing, it's also, it's something I signed and said I would do as their manager. So that these stories that I'm hearing where people are, I'm not gonna name names, but the really infamous one of the woman was raped by a co-actor and went to the executive producer, creator of the show, and said, but I don't want anyone to do anything about it, and that executive producer did not do anything about it as a female, or as her, creator of the show, is mind-boggling to me. But that was a hard situation for me because I thought we should, maybe I should go anyway, but she hadn't come and complained to me about it. So it was difficult. But I asked him, I can orchestrate this so we can go and sit, so you guys can go sit. And he said, no, she told me that she's fine and she just wanted to tell me and blah, 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 blah. And I said, all right. And sure enough, it worked out. It was fine. But, and often that is what HR does. Often it is just a horrible joke that, but comes from the place, that same place of like, we're not understanding the problem. Right. And HR normally does just give the guy a call and say, you made her upset, X, Y, and Z, here's your learning lesson, supposedly,
Because that's, before I go to Quinn, that's, I'm interested, if it is about power as women in our fantasy world, as there are more women in power, does it go the other way? I don't know. And then one thing which I definitely want to talk about is, I come from a 12-step family, right? So I'm interested in sort of dysfunctional and alcoholic family systems. So as interesting or not as the predator is, I'm super interested in people going and saying, it's okay, it worked out. Really interested in that, kind of as much. So thank you.
I have been in the entertainment industry or around it since I was 7 years old. People are funny around kids. They do things and they don't realize that children actually notice them. So there was a lot that I saw in my life, and I have sort of an observer's temperament. So when all of this began with regards to Harvey Weinstein, I was noticing a tone to it, which is Harvey, that terrible man, Harvey, that monster. Harvey is a terrible man, Harvey is a monster. But my concern was, it was beginning to feel to me as if, well, you can tell the predators, they're the ones who live under the bridge. And I ended up writing a piece for Esquire to the effect that my mother had a friend who was a manager of children when I was growing up, and we would go over and spend time at his pool. We didn't have a pool, he did. And there were always young men around. And by young men, I mean boys, 14, 15 years old. They were always staying with them because they lived out of the state and their families would send them for interviews. And there was something kind of, well, these boys never really worked exactly. And and there was always a shirtless picture of the new ones up in the stairwell. And every year there were new boys. And my mother and I would say to one another in the car, we would sort of allude to that's weird, right? I mean, is that weird? That's gotta be weird. But he was our friend, and he was funny, and he was lovely, and none of the boys were crying or taking me aside to tell me things. Then again, as far as they knew, we were friends with maybe their victimizer. And what I said in this piece was, it's easy to demonize them, but we have to make a peace with the fact that people we like are going to be bad people who've done bad things. And until we accept that, all we're going to do is convulsively find them, point them, move them on, move them out, and in a year we're all going to be saying to one another in the entertainment industry, wasn't that terrible when we had to get rid of all of them? And thank goodness everything's better now. And nothing will have changed. We were talking, process is boring. By its definition, process is boring. It is meant to make people slower and more thoughtful. But unless we look at the entertainment industry and the service industry and the hospitality industry and begin and every other industry where there are groups of people, and say, all right, how do we create a working environment for everyone? All we have trained the people who are predators to do is get more careful. They will change up their game.
I think I'm here because I'm lucky. I work at a company that, at an agency, one of the big agencies. I started off at a smaller one, and we were bought by ICM. And I was really fortunate at the agency that was bought, Broder. We had an incredible culture. It was a smaller agency. We went into a new culture and had to adjust and adapt, and the leadership from Broder became the leadership at ICM Partners. And I've been really, really lucky because the leadership at that company has always been supportive of good work. Now, it happened, it just like in director, in our industry in general, there have been fewer women in our industry, and as well at the agencies, at least that's been my experience. But I have always been rewarded for really good work, like hard work and doing well. They want everyone to succeed. And when the Weinstein thing happened, the leadership at our company said to the female partners, and me being one of them, sit at the head of the table, speak. And I was like, wow, we were all like, oh. But why didn't we speak for so long? I don't know. I think it's all part of the same problem. So now we are speaking, now we are at the head of the table, and we always have been, but maybe not as big of a voice. And now the men in leadership at our company, we are leaders too. I'm a department head, I'm a partner. I was one of the first partners, and I'm really proud to be, but now I'm empowered more. I'm able to have a voice. I'm also a person who has stepped forward in our company as in a leadership role with regard to sexual harassment and harassment in general. And not only is my door open, but I want to know. And the men, the leadership at my company have said, we want to know. And I think that's very different at whether you're on a set or working at the Gap or working in a restaurant or whatever. What is that clear path? What do we do? How should we go forward? Because it's like what Erin said, it's like everybody's sort of like, have always been sort of, like, it's okay. Like it's the norm. Like we all have. And I am energized by this time. I mean, I think this is exciting, and I'm really, really excited. And I think that one thing that I didn't even expect, and I mean, again, this conversation 2 months ago would have been different. I mean, it's changed every single day, every single minute that a new news thing's come. I feel more comfortable talking about it. If I had been asked to sit here 2 months ago, I don't know that I would have. It's every day, it's getting better, and I hope that that continues and doesn't just become last week's news, because there's a lot more to come. And I think what this community, and why I feel so lucky to be part of this community, is we all talked a minute before we came up here about it's not just the entertainment industry. Obviously, we get to be part of a platform that can speak out, where people will listen and read papers and look at magazines and say, wow, what did they say? What are they saying? But what this community has to be, I think, what we all have to do is, how can we help everyone in this case, right? What do we do in that moment?
Awesome. Oh my God, I'm excited too. I think for those that heard Mike 9, I mean, I think some of it is like digging way down deep to archetype and way down deep into like, well, that's why we can rape and pillage the earth, because she's female, you know, and, you know, I dusted off people's history of the United States, and it's like the story, the celebration story is the triumphal story, and it's really a head spinner on many, many, many levels. And, you know, I think for all of us in that intersectional way that has had to deal with any sort of challenging in whatever way, you do get survivally. And so it's like, as much as, you know, it's like, ew, it's like, you know, I can imagine an agent going like, oh, well, he didn't rape you, or you got out alive, or you got the part. You know, it's like this weird, you know, I've been lucky myself, partly because I came here slightly older, and then I met my incredible husband right away, and then I started producing right away. But a friend of mine who had a terrible James Toback story, and James Toback said, I want you to do something, and she said, I don't want to do something, and he said, then you don't get the part, and she dutifully, she's an awesome girl, and she went to her agent at CAA, and she said, you know, this happened, and he said, well, it's good news that he wants to fuck you. And my friend immediately went and got her college degree, and then slowly came back and started working for Shonda Rhimes and people, you know, and she's like, I didn't want to tell you, but that's my film agent. So then I talked to him, you know what I mean? So it's like all of us are having this family important, like, all right, so I want to go, I think we should start talking to the community. One thing just, and this isn't, we'll hear from all you guys, but Quinn touched on it too. You know, I'm the kid of lawyers, and I get really nervous when things move really fast. And as exciting as it is, and we were talking about it, like, well, if somebody topples that fast, it probably means he's got a file this thick, you know? However, certain things aren't equivalent. And in a more slower process, a court of law, this wouldn't equal to that. And I get nervous, frankly, when things move really speedy. And the other reason I get nervous is like, oh, as to Quinn said, it's like, oh, that was 2017. We did that. You know, we took care of that. And it's just a pendulum that's going to swing right back. So my question to the group, to these ladies, is like, what are systemic changes that we can put in place, that are being put in place, that really are sustainable? You know, that really isn't just going to be about this one moment. So I think we should, like, it's 1:15, right? So you guys ask questions.
So I'm Elizabeth Tatum, everyone. So my question is, and I've actually responded to certain people about this, when people get very nervous saying, well, does that mean, you know, with the climate about how you respectfully treat people in your place of work, whatever that is, can my boss not say I look nice, or can I not tell that to somebody, or what if I touch, you know, and people really get freaked out by that. And I'm a musician, so I've been in performance situations where, I mean, you know, people are body. I mean, you can get away with a lot of things amongst each other. Can you address a little bit about that? I think it has a lot to do with who's in power and who's doing what, and just what the whole atmosphere of where you are is like.
Just so I'm clear, do you mean like now how everyone's responding? Because I've had a lot of people on like to talk to something you were saying it triggered something for me was, you know, I make comedies, so the set tends to be light and a lot of jokes and a lot of being silly. And you know, we've had a couple moments where somebody's like accidentally, you know, touches someone's butt or something, goes, whoa, real Weinstein moment there. And it's become like the little tagline, you know, joke. And it worries me, you know, I'm guilty of it too, we're all doing it, but it worries me because I don't want to at all poke fun at this. Do you know what I mean? So, and there is a thing on the culture now where I've had a couple of male directors who are fun and silly say to me, oh, am I allowed to say that anymore? Am I allowed to do it? That is definitely happening, 100%. Everyone is talking that way. Can I do this? Can I not do that? And then I had one male director say to me, and he was kind of joking, but he was kind of serious, which leads into what you were talking about, like the witch hunt stuff, is he looked at me and goes, you know what? All right, we get it. Lesson learned. Lesson learned, we got it. And he was joking, but just talking about this is so much, and it's just coming out every single day, that at some point it's like, we got it. Can we just deal with what we know now and we'll fix it? And it's like, no. You know?
I have to say that is something that I'm running into as well, and we have to be careful and mindful of what the other person is thinking and feeling when we're sitting across from them at lunch or having a coffee or in the workplace or whatever. I'm noticing that there are men, good men, who are feeling really weird about this, right? And we need them to stand up and be part of the conversation in a really positive way. Not everybody comes to All Saints and gets to hear what we just heard, but that's a problem too, and it's a dicey thing because I'm finding that we need to figure out moment to moment, person to person, like, because we don't know what that other person has experienced themselves. Some men may feel really uncomfortable talking about it and don't know what to say. And I think that's something that we have to embrace and figure out how to deal with as well. And there are also men that I had a man in my office the other day who said to me, Janet, not a colleague, it was a different person, who said, I'm a flirt, and I feel bad about that now, and I feel like uncomfortable, like he feels uncomfortable in his own skin because his whole life he's been a flirt, and I told him, I shared my experience with him, and I wasn't worried, but like that's an issue too.
Speaking as a performer, just because so I have a weird job, right? I mean, I meet somebody and then a half an hour later have to kiss them. Like, that's weird. and I do think in general, when you're in the flow of art making, art making is very insubordinate, right? And we don't want to be in our heads about, and so we talk about a sturdy container. So the sturdy container is the producer, the director, that allows us performers to just flow, right? So we have, when I was on every TV show, I think HR comes down and you have your sexual harassment seminar, which always made us feel like bad mice because it just makes you feel really rebellious. But then a dear friend of mine, who's a male, and I adore him, and I said, what is the deal with body jokes? And she explained it really beautifully. She said, listen, if the two of you are going nuts, it's like, do you think it's funny? I think it's funny. Great. A set being what it is, there's 200 people, and if somebody in earshot really is like, that joke wasn't even directed toward me, but I feel uncomfortable, don't do it. But I love that freedom because we are art makers, right? So at a certain point, or I'm playing Clytemnestra, or all sorts of things are flowing through me, right? But the container, and when I'm a container, I take that job very seriously, and that allows the performers to flow. And just let their imagination be free. So you need both, but God forbid, we get too self-conscious especially comedy. But then you have a watchful eye and a trustworthy eye.
And at least the conversation's happening now.
Right.
Whereas we used to just do that and make obnoxious jokes in the video village and not care who was who could hear us. Now we're at least having the conversation where, if I'm making a joke with my first AD, oh God. What is right? You're like, is this just the two of us right now? Right. Great. You know what I mean? Yeah. Knowing each other for 8 years. And so, but at least the conversation is taking place now. Right. Yeah. Being aware, self-aware.
For me, I just wanted to say one thing. We don't have any sort of container in fashion because models are independent contractors. So there's a producer on set, but it's very different than I think for an actor. So, you're really relying on people sort of doing the right thing and knowing to do the right thing. And like you said, if I'm taking pictures with a photographer, it's a conversation that we're having. And if he goes too far, if someone on set says something within earshot, I have to call my agent or my manager who then has to call the set.
But nobody's right there.
There's no one right there. Now, if I'm doing a commercial with SAG, it's very different. So we don't have any.
And part of the dialogue
protections.
is to push the model to
Right.
be more expressive or revealing, or that's part
Or
of.
whatever his or her vision is. I mean, there are female photographers as well. And I think that the models that I know that have done well, myself included, and I have Me Too moments. I have probably thousands of them, but I still had someone on set with me. And most of my colleagues, because we typically start at 16 or 17, 18, the ones who've done well have had a parent or a stand-in of some kind to be on set and sort of monitor. It's very hard to monitor when you're the one and there's 200 people there sort of waiting for you to do your thing. Where do you go? So, and also as a black woman, there's an issue of me being an angry black woman because I just don't get the joke. Right. So I can't tie a bow on that. It just is kind of what it is. So.
We have another, yes.
Yes, I've been wondering for a long time, and I wonder what your ideas are on this. What do you think the origin is, aside from power, the attitude that a woman's body is a man's playground?
I think the Bible. I think I think that's what Mike preached on. I mean, I think it goes so deep. Yeah, you go, Mike.
First of all, you did it far better than I'm about to do it, and yet I'm going to try. Specific to the entertainment industry, but maybe also anybody who creates a business of their own and ends up being successful. There is an element of hubris to it. To look at an industry where most people aren't successful, most people statistically will fail and say, nope, it's going to work for me. You got to be a little delusional, because you're just going to keep powering through barriers that would stop a reasonable person. So I think some of these men who end up being extremely successful have built a machine in their head for just ignoring societal norms, ignoring the things that stop other people. If you can make 15 cold calls to pitch and sell your script, you already have the sort of brain that doesn't really listen to no. If you're a billionaire, you have already powered through a bunch of people to get through what you want. And I think there's a bit of the brain that says, your no is the thing that actually wakes me up.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emiko. I'm a recording artist and composer for film and TV, and I'm the founder of the I Believe You project here in Pasadena, which is aimed to support victims and survivors of sexual assault, male and female. And my question to the panel is, first of all, thank you for putting on this. This is wonderful. I heard about it in the paper. How would you address, or do you feel that Hollywood and the entertainment industries in general have a responsibility to work with law enforcement and the judicial communities to change also the system from within? Because, I'll give you an example, a personal example that I had was, I won't name a name, but a member of the judicial community who wears a long black thing, and we'll leave it there, said to me, well, it might have been inappropriate, it might have been unwanted, you might have said no, but I wouldn't call it sexual assault. Bang. Next. So, and he did that specifically because of my career in entertainment. Like, oh, well, obviously you wear short skirts and you dance around and you this and you that. How can we as a community, because as you said, there are millions of others who don't have these jobs, who aren't in the limelight, who aren't in the spotlight. Do you feel that Hollywood and entertainment have a responsibility to work further within law enforcement and within the judicial communities to change that, to say a woman's body is not a man's playground and we're here to make art, we're not here to have sex? Can you speak to that, please?
Well, I think clearly we do have a responsibility. I mean, I think clearly any organization has a responsibility to acknowledge that this isn't just unethical or hurting or against a woman's body, but it's also illegal, and that has to be addressed. I think the problem is all of these organizations, 20th Century Fox, Paramount, they all have their own human resources division. They have their own code of conduct. I mean, when they fired Matt Lauer Monday night after this woman sat with them, with their HR department for 6 hours or whatever it was, giving her testimony, she had some sort of evidence that clearly they could say beyond a doubt he had broken the code of conduct in their HR, and he had to sign a deal memo that said, I will uphold that code of conduct. The problem is everybody has a different HR department, and so what is their HR department, and who are the lawyers running their HR department, and what are they making decisions about? So somehow we have to come up with a force, a united group, and I think Kathy Kennedy, who's a very powerful female producer in the city, has one of the best ideas, which is she is saying that all the members of the AMPTP, which is all the studios, have to jointly fund a task force that is one gigantic human resources division. And that it should be an organization that's paid, made up of sociologists, made up of psychologists, made up of lawyers, made up of intellectual men and women of all color who can talk about, who can be on and be paid. They're paid to do this. And every member of the AMPTP has to pay for this, and that they can make decisions based on not just what it's like to be in Hollywood, but what it's like to be a psychiatrist, what it's like to, from all these different perspectives. I think if that could be a united force, and hopefully could maybe do for the fashion industry, it could be included in that it would be a place that I could feel I could go to and do my complaint, and I'm not going to lose my job because I didn't go to 20th. I went to this organization, and that they would have a legal. They would have to deal with the legality of it, I suppose. I mean, that would have to be part of it, right?
It's such a great point, and I do feel like part of this processing and lamenting is saying, okay, I mean, again, my legal brain is like, that's terrible. Interesting. Like, how is that person damaged? Like, again, it's like, first of all, I'm listening, but I also think that now it does have this. It'll be interesting as it sifts down, and systems are in place, to actually continue with this work, and so it's not pure emotionality as it needs to be, as it is right now, as it has to be right now. When do we wrap up? Now? Okay.
We need more time. Join me, would you, in thanking our panelists. You guys are fabulous. Thank you.